coming on top with the clearances and stoppages and contested footy early. What do you think turned it around after that? Or was that the main area that turned the match around, do you think, when they sort of evened it up a bit?
Oh, I mean, you play against the Bulldogs and you predict why do you get beaten against the Bulldogs before the game. You say, well, they give you a touch-up at clearance, you can't stop their run and gun, handball game, Bontempelli, English. They're all the sort of the things that you're thinking about. And, I think we won contested possession by 20. We won the clearance count. Thought Nashi did a great job on Bontempelli, and, he's still a good player and still had an influence, but I thought Nashi quelled him for the most part. I think Ned Reeves on English was a big win. English still is a very, very good player, but there was a lot of those aspects of the game went really well. But at the end of the day, they're a good side, and we just couldn't stay with them for long enough.
Hardwick as well, pretty good on Waitman.
Yeah, Waitman's such an important player for them. He just finds a way to create some goals out of nothing, and it wasn't him that caused us those troubles. So, but at the other end of the field, we couldn't quite. So many just missed chances. I think, Mitch Lewis, great to have him back, but he just missed a couple of chances, and then Brocky just so close on a couple of occasions. I think Ferg was a little bit similar. So, because we can't put them away and hit the scoreboard often enough and quickly enough, we just never could quite get a lead, and because of that, they were just a bit too strong for us as the game went on.
On Lewis, you were saying during the week you were pretty happy with where he was fitness-wise. What did you make of the performance? Like, he looked pretty dangerous, particularly early, but just maybe the goal kicking could have made it a bit more damaging, I guess.
Yeah, well, he's a beautiful set shot, and I'm not concerned about his goal kicking. He's a great goal kicker. He's always had a really sound technique, and he's worked hard at it over a long period of time. So didn't work for him today, but his first came back for, I think, since round 20 or thereabouts of last year. So I think when you watched him bounce around in the first part of the game, you're like, okay, this guy was definitely ready to play. I think he took 11 marks for the day, and I was really pleased with his performance and our medical team to get him ready to play in that manner for his first game back.
How much does he change what you do further up the field?
We've had to try to find a way to create goals. I think you do what we do with a little bit more confidence when he's there. There was a couple of options where I'm thinking that's an unusual kick, and then you saw that it was Mitch Lewis on the end of it, and he obviously gives us a contest and quite often a mark. So he just gives us a bit of confidence going forward, which is important.
The Tassie decision today, any thoughts on that, the stadium funding going through?
That must have happened while I was in the game. Has that all gone through? Well, I mean, we all thought that would happen. I think it's fantastic. I've spent 20. I've probably gone there 5 or 6 times for the best part of 20 years. So, I think that they absolutely love their footy in Tassie, and there's a lot of Hawks fans there. So we're going to have to work very hard to keep them all on the brown and gold bandwagon. But we'll be back down there in a couple of weeks, and looking forward to hearing more about that.
When so much of we seem to be falling down seems to be on foot skills and execution, how do you sort of go about that during the week? How do you sort of train ruthlessness?
I think if you think about the problems in our game right now, we had 396 possessions, but could only go inside 50, 47 times. They had 30 or 40 less possessions, but went inside 50 10 times more. So our use of the ball, our offensive method isn't correlating to inside 50s and then scores. So there's some work to do in that part of the game. But as a coach, if you've got your contest, your offense and your defense that you need to put work into, offense is probably the last piece that comes together, and we've worked hard on it. But the contest and defense has certainly taken a bit more of a priority over the last few weeks after the first couple of rounds of the year. And so what we've shown is that we can be good in those areas, but we're struggling to get all 3 phases of the game right at the same time. And when we do, I think we'll be a much more consistent performing team.
Did you like what you saw from the debutants?
Yeah, I mean, it was great. It's such a great experience for them, looking at their eyes before the game, and having all their families here and the journeys that those 2 lads have been on. Great. Neither of them have been at the club for even a year. In Rama's case, he was mid-season of last year, and Josh through the draft. So those guys getting exposure, and both of them looked quite comfortable at the level at different stages, and then at other times, like all first gamers, except for probably Dacos, I guess, they just looked like, oh wow, this is a lot. And talking to them afterwards, they said, oh yeah, I thought I was going to be free, and then there was someone there, and so their learning curve is extremely steep in game one. And I was really pleased that we're able to play 2 debutants today, and they loved it.
What's your philosophy with debutants? Because you've obviously got a few that you've brought in this season. Do you try to give them an extended run, like 2 or 3 weeks, just to make sure they get a bit of confidence?
You're trying to get me on selection already. I probably haven't got that far. I mean, I think with our squad, what we're trying to do is build a premiership squad of players, and some are quite obvious. Whether that's Hardwick, who you mentioned before, with his great job on. Now he's no doubt he's going to play in our next premiership, and so what we have to do is find as many players like that as we can, and giving exposure to lots of these players as often as we can is important. But every game that we give a young fellow, we're taking off another one, and that's going to be the challenge of the list profile that we have at the minute. And I'm quite excited by what we're doing, because our 15th down to 35th player is very, very even. Box Hill are going really well. They've got a good test tomorrow down in Wonthaggi against Casey. But if you look at the players that are playing there, there's a lot of them that we want to try to get into the team, but it has to be at the expense of someone else. So with a trip to Perth coming up this week, it'll be an interesting selection dilemma that we'll have.
We'll just take one more guy.
With the players that you left out, what do you want to see from? You mentioned you'd be watching the match on your iPad or something. What do you want to see from Connor McDonald tomorrow?
Yeah, so Connor McDonald and Cam McKenzie and Denver Granger Barras, as well as a lot of the other guys that have been playing there. I think all of those guys playing AFL footy at VFL level, and they don't need to be best player on the ground, but if they look like AFL players, then that's what you're really looking for. Playing with confidence, playing to their strengths, and looking like the players that we want them to be in the future. But I'm really pleased with the progress of all 3 of those players, despite not being in the side for this week.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.